All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This week you've sent us some really, really fascinating stuff. And there's a common thread running through it all, and it's something really fundamental in this whole AI age. It's all about the role of frameworks, structured thinking. We've got pieces on strategic overviews. We've got really granular looks at AI development, just a fantastic range.
Yeah.
So our mission today, I think, is to really extract those core insights and figure out why these structured approaches, why are they becoming so essential now as AI keeps reshaping the world around us?
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting is even though we've got all these different perspectives, a wide range of sources that you've gathered, there's this underlying agreement.
Right.
Which is that simply having powerful AI, that's not enough.
Right. It's got to be pointed in the right direction.
We need ways to actually direct that power to make sense of what it's giving us and ultimately to make sure it's serving us, serving our goals, our values. And that's really where the strength of frameworks comes in.
Okay, so let's start right there. When we say frameworks, what are we actually picturing in our minds?
Right.
Because it can feel a little bit abstract.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good way to think about frameworks is they're really structured ways of approaching complexity.
Oh, okay.
So, it might be a visual tool like a decision tree or a diagram.
I see.
Or it could be something more conceptual, like a set of principles that you use. Right. But the goal is really to bring clarity and consistency, a repeatable method to how we understand things, how we analyze problems, how we solve them.
Yeah, break it down.
And one thing that all the sources agree on, these aren't just academic exercises.
Right.
These are tools that people actually use in all kinds of fields.
Yeah.
Business, technology, even public policy, education, they're everywhere.
Okay. So they're not just ideas on a page. They're actually something we can grab and use.
Exactly.
Now, you've looked at a lot of different types of frameworks. Can you give us a quick rundown of what some of the big buckets are?
Yeah, definitely. The sources categorize them in some really helpful ways. So first you've got your strategic frameworks.
Okay.
And these are really about, the big picture.
Right.
A good example is the balanced scorecard. And it's not just about focusing on financials, the bottom line.
Right.
It's about making sure that what you're doing day to day actually lines up with your long-term vision.
The big goals.
Exactly. Then you've got analytical frameworks, and these are all about figuring out why things happen.
Okay.
So root cause analysis is a classic one. It's not just about saying, okay, here's the problem. It's about systematically saying, well, what's the root cause of this? How can we get to the bottom of it?
Dig deeper.
Exactly. Then there are creative frameworks. And these are for when you need to generate new ideas, innovate.
Right.
And a classic example is Scamper. It's this checklist of prompts that makes you look at problems from all these different angles.
Oh, interesting.
So, it pushes you to think in new ways. Then you've got operational frameworks. These are about making things run smoothly and efficiently.
Okay.
So Lean Six Sigma is a big one in this category. It's all about eliminating waste and optimizing processes.
Got it.
And then finally, you have ethical frameworks. These help us navigate the trickier questions about right and wrong, especially when it comes to technology.
So that would be like utilitarianism, right?
Yeah, utilitarianism is a good example, where you're looking at the overall consequences of an action.
Yeah.
So when we're dealing with AI, these frameworks become even more crucial.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because we need to make sure we're using it responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. So we've got frameworks for guiding our direction, figuring out why things happen, sparking new ideas, running things smoothly, and staying ethical. It sounds like a complete toolkit for just thinking better, honestly.
It really is.
But why is all this structured thinking so crucial right now, especially for you, our listener? You're out there trying to make sense of this AI explosion. Right.
You want to learn quickly, and you want to learn thoroughly. How do frameworks actually help with that?
Well, I think the sources really emphasize that frameworks, they act as a roadmap for your thinking. They help you avoid cognitive biases, which are, these mental shortcuts we all take that can sometimes lead us astray.
Right.
And by having a structured process, you make sure you're exploring problems thoroughly, considering all the angles, even the ones you might naturally miss.
Yeah.
And it also helps with communication. If everyone's using the same framework, then everyone's on the same page. They're speaking the same language.
Right, shared understanding.
Exactly. And I think one of the sources said it really well. They said, frameworks are like a map in unfamiliar territory.
Ooh, I like that.
And that's really what AI is, right? This exciting new frontier. But it can also be a little disorienting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we don't want to just be wandering around out there.
Exactly. And beyond just avoiding getting lost, I think there's another really important point here.
Which is making sure that AI is a tool that serves us,
Right.
not the other way around.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
even though these systems can do amazing things, sometimes they can feel like a black box.
Yeah.
We don't always understand how they're getting their results.
Right. Yeah.
So frameworks help us maintain that human-centered perspective.
Yeah.
They make sure that the technology is actually aligning with our values, with our goals as a society.
Absolutely. So it's like the scaffolding we need to build responsibly with AI.
Yeah, I like that.
Now, the sources also pointed out some specific ways that this AI era, it really challenges our traditional thinking.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of those cognitive hurdles that frameworks help us overcome?
Yeah, there are a few key things that came up. And the first one is just the sheer volume of data.
Mm.
AI can process and generate so much information.
What's a crazy?
It's way beyond what humans can handle on their own.
Right.
And that can easily lead to this analysis paralysis, decision fatigue.
Yeah.
So frameworks provide this crucial filter. They help you prioritize, organize, extract meaning from this ocean of data. It's like having a sieve that helps you find the gold nuggets in all that sand.
Right. That really resonates. I think it's like trying to read 1,000 news articles at once.
Exactly.
You need some structure to tell you what's actually important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then another thing is the complexity of what AI tells us.
Okay.
So let's say you have an AI that's predicting market trends. It's one thing to get the prediction, but then understanding why it made that prediction, what factors are really driving it, that requires a more structured approach.
Right.
You need to break it down, think critically about it, not just blindly accept whatever the AI says.
So it's not just about taking the answer at face value. It's about understanding the reasoning behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think the pace of AI innovation itself is a challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Things are moving so fast that it's easy to get caught up in the hype of new capabilities.
Right.
And you can lose sight of your overall strategic goals.
Right.
So strategic frameworks help you stay focused, adapt your plans, make sure that your AI initiatives are actually moving you towards your bigger objectives.
Yeah, you've got to have that North Star.
Exactly.
So AI, it gives us all this amazing potential, but it also throws a lot of complexity our way.
Mm-hmm.
And frameworks are those essential tools to navigate it all.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay. So we've established what frameworks are, why they're so important, especially now. But let's talk about how this structured thinking actually enhances the way humans and AI work together.
Yeah.
It's not about one replacing the other, right?
No, not at all. And the sources really highlight some key ways that frameworks actually strengthen that partnership.
Okay.
So first of all, they lead to better AI systems.
Okay, how so?
Well, by using frameworks like design thinking, which really emphasizes understanding the needs of the user,
Okay.
you can design AI systems that are more intuitive, more user-friendly, and ultimately more successful.
So the framework helps us define the why and the who before we even start building the how.
Exactly. And then second, frameworks help us make better decisions when we're using AI.
Okay.
So tools like decision matrices or cost-benefit analyses help us really weigh our options, understand the trade-offs.
Right.
And when we combine that structured thinking with the data that AI provides, then we're making more informed decisions.
So it's about using AI as a powerful input into our decision making, not just handing the decision over to the AI completely.
Exactly. And then I think another really important point is that frameworks help with communication and collaboration across different teams.
Okay.
AI projects often involve people with very different skills, different backgrounds.
Right. Engineers, designers, business people.
Exactly. And so frameworks can establish a common language. A good example is CRISPM, which stands for Cross-Industry Standard Process for Data Mining.
Okay.
And it's a framework that provides a really clear roadmap for data mining projects.
I see.
So everyone knows what the goals are, what their role is, what the methodology is. And that makes collaboration much smoother.
I can see that. You can have the smartest engineers, the most creative designers, the best business minds, but if they can't talk to each other, the project is going to struggle.
Absolutely. Frameworks bridge that gap.
Yeah. Now, let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the strategic value of frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about actually integrating AI into a company's strategy, how do these structured approaches help at that higher level?
So at that level, frameworks provide the structure to make sure that your AI efforts are actually aligned with your business goals.
Okay.
So you have frameworks like OKRs, objectives, and key results, or the McKinsey 7S framework, which helps organizations look at all these different aspects of their business.
Right.
And these frameworks help you set clear priorities for your AI work, allocate your resources effectively, and then measure the impact of your investments.
So it's not just about doing AI for AI's sake. It's about making sure it's actually driving your business forward.
Exactly. And I think frameworks also play a role in fostering innovation and research and development in the AI field itself.
Okay.
So you have frameworks like TRIZ, which is all about solving inventive problems, or design thinking, or blue ocean strategy, which is about finding new markets.
Right.
And these frameworks, they encourage you to think differently, challenge assumptions, come up with novel solutions. And in a field like AI, which is constantly evolving, that's really important.
Yeah, so it's not just about applying existing knowledge, it's about pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Absolutely. And finally, I think the sources really emphasize the importance of building a framework-driven culture within an organization.
Okay.
So this is about leaders championing this kind of structured thinking, embedding it into the processes, so that people at all levels are empowered to think critically, to make decisions with confidence.
So it becomes part of the DNA of the company.
Exactly. And that kind of culture helps with learning and sharing insights.
So it sounds like to really master AI, it's not just about using the technology, it's about making framework thinking a core part of how you operate as a company.
That's exactly right.
Now let's look ahead a little bit. How might this framework thinking intersect with the future of work, especially as humans and AI become even more intertwined?
Yeah, the sources point to some really interesting possibilities. One is this idea of human-AI hybrid roles.
Okay.
So in the future, people are going to need to work seamlessly alongside AI tools.
Right.
And frameworks will provide the structure for that collaboration.
I see.
They'll help people understand where their skills are most valuable, how to integrate their expertise with AI.
So it's almost like frameworks become the operating manual for these new human-machine teams.
In a sense, yes. And then they're also going to be crucial for continuous learning and adaptation.
Okay.
Yeah, the skills that are needed in this AI age, they're constantly changing.
Right. Yeah.
And frameworks can help you learn faster, more effectively.
So it's like having a structured approach to keep up with the pace of change.
Exactly. And then I think maybe the most exciting possibility is that frameworks can empower people across the organization to engage with AI, even if they don't have a technical background.
Okay.
So tools like the AI Canvas or frameworks that focus on data literacy, these can help people understand AI projects, ask the right questions, and even use AI tools in their own work.
So it's about making AI less of a mysterious thing and more of a tool that everyone can understand and use.
Exactly. And this leads to this idea that maybe we're moving from knowledge workers to what we might call framework workers.
Oh, interesting.
So in this AI-powered economy, the most valuable people will be those who can use frameworks to think strategically, creatively, ethically.
So it's not just about what you know, but how you think, especially when working with AI.
Precisely.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from defining what frameworks are to understanding why they're so important now and how they might shape the future of work.
Yeah, it's been a great discussion.
As we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the core message you want our listeners to take away about the role of frameworks in this AI age?
I think the core message is that in this world that's increasingly driven by AI, your ability to think clearly and strategically using frameworks, it's not just a nice-to-have skill. It's absolutely essential.
It's like the foundation for everything else.
Exactly.
And we've talked a lot about how frameworks enhance the way humans and AI collaborate. What's one insight that really stood out to you in that regard?
Well, I thought the idea of frameworks acting as a shared language was particularly powerful.
Yeah.
It allows people from very different backgrounds to come together and work effectively on AI projects.
Yeah, it's that common ground that's so important.
Exactly.
Now, looking ahead, we also touched on how frameworks themselves might evolve in this AI landscape. Any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the idea of frameworks becoming these meta AI tools is really fascinating.
Meta AI tools.
Yeah, so you can imagine frameworks that actually guide how AI systems are built and evaluated.
Oh, wow.
And then we also talked about how AI could help us design better frameworks by analyzing huge amounts of data.
Right. So AI is both making frameworks more important and also helping us create better ones.
Exactly.
So to leave you, our listener, with a final thought, if digital literacy was a defining skill of the past decade, could framework thinking be the essential competency for this AI age?
It very well could be.
Think about it. How might adopting even one or two new frameworks, whether it's for strategic planning, problem solving, or just boosting your creativity, how might that sharpen your thinking and make you more effective in this world that's increasingly powered by AI? What kind of framework thinker will you become? It's a question worth pondering. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.